What if the greatest prison in your life has no walls? What if the reason you feel stuck, anxious, rejected, or exhausted is because you've handed your self-worth to other people? The moment you stop asking the world for permission to be yourself, everything begins to change. Not because the world changes, but because you do. Most people are unaware of how deeply the need for approval influences their lives. It operates quietly, beneath the surface of everyday decisions, shaping behavior in ways that often go unnoticed. From childhood, many learn that love, praise, and acceptance are linked to certain actions. They are rewarded for being obedient, agreeable, successful, or pleasing to others. Over time, this creates a powerful psychological pattern. Instead of asking, "What do I truly want?" they begin asking, "What will make others approve of me?" What starts as a natural desire for connection gradually becomes a dependence on external validation. This dependence can feel almost invisible because society often encourages it. People are praised for fitting in, following expectations, and seeking recognition. Social media amplifies this tendency by turning approval into numbers, likes, comments, and followers. A person's mood can rise or fall based on how others respond to them. Although this may seem harmless, it slowly teaches the mind that self-worth is something earned from the outside rather than discovered within. The problem with seeking validation is that it never provides lasting satisfaction. Approval creates a brief emotional high, but it quickly fades. The mind then searches for the next compliment, the next achievement, or the next sign of acceptance. It becomes an endless cycle. Like someone chasing a horizon that constantly moves farther away, the person keeps striving for enough approval to finally feel secure. Yet the feeling of security never fully arrives, because it depends on factors beyond their control. Many people alter their personalities to maintain this approval. They suppress opinions that might cause disagreement. They avoid expressing emotions that others may judge. They say yes when they want to say no. They become experts at reading the expectations of those around them and adapting accordingly. While this may reduce conflict, it often creates an internal division. The outward self becomes increasingly different from the authentic self hidden beneath the surface. Over time, this disconnect can lead to feelings of emptiness and confusion. A person may achieve success, receive praise and gain acceptance, yet still feel unsatisfied. Deep down, they recognize that much of what is being celebrated is not their true self, but a carefully constructed image designed to win approval. The more energy invested in maintaining this image, the more exhausting life becomes. What makes validation so addictive is that it temporarily relieves insecurity. For a moment, a compliment can quiet self-doubt. Recognition can create a sense of importance. Acceptance can ease the fear of rejection. But because these feelings come from outside sources, they remain fragile and temporary. The moment approval disappears, insecurity often returns stronger than before. Without realizing it, many people spend years living according to the reactions of others. Their happiness becomes dependent on applause, agreement, and acceptance. They hand over the authority to define their worth, allowing strangers, friends, family, and society to determine how they feel about themselves. The hidden addiction is not merely wanting approval. It is believing that approval is necessary in order to feel valuable, complete, and worthy. When a person begins to live according to the expectations of others, they often believe they are creating a better life for themselves. They assume that if they can earn enough approval, avoid enough criticism, and satisfy enough people, they will finally experience peace and fulfillment. Yet the opposite usually happens. The more a person depends on external validation, the further they drift from their authentic nature. What begins as a desire to be accepted gradually becomes a habit of self-abandonment. Every individual possesses unique thoughts, desires, values, and instincts. These inner qualities form the foundation of identity. However, when approval becomes the highest priority, these qualities are often pushed aside. A person may choose a path not because it feels meaningful, but because it is admired by others. They may pursue goals that bring recognition rather than genuine satisfaction. Over time, they become disconnected from their own inner voice. This disconnection rarely happens all at once. It develops through countless small compromises. A person stays silent instead of expressing what they truly think. They agree when they secretly disagree. They suppress emotions to avoid making others uncomfortable. They adjust their personality depending on who is present. Each compromise may seem insignificant, but together they create a life built around expectations rather than authenticity. One of the greatest costs of this way of living is exhaustion. Constantly monitoring the reactions of others requires tremendous emotional energy. The mind becomes occupied with questions such as, did they like what I said? Did I make a good impression? What do they think of me now? Instead of being present in life, a person becomes trapped in a continuous cycle of self-evaluation. Every interaction feels like a test, and every criticism feels like a threat. The need to maintain approval also creates fear. When acceptance becomes the source of self-worth, rejection feels dangerous. Even minor disagreements can trigger anxiety because they seem to challenge a person's value. As a result, many people avoid risks, difficult conversations, and honest self-expression. They become prisoners of their own desire to be liked. Another consequence is resentment. People who constantly sacrifice their own needs often expect appreciation in return. When that appreciation does not arrive, frustration begins to grow. They may feel unrecognized, overlooked, or taken for granted. Yet the deeper issue is that they have been living according to expectations that were never truly their own. Perhaps the most painful cost is the loss of self-respect. Deep inside, every person knows when they are betraying their own truth. Even if others praise them, a quiet part of the psyche recognizes the compromise. This inner conflict can create feelings of emptiness that no amount of external success can resolve. A person may appear confident and accomplished on the outside, while feeling disconnected and uncertain within. The pursuit of validation promises acceptance, security, and happiness. Yet the longer a person chases it, the more they sacrifice the very qualities that make them feel alive. In trying to gain approval from everyone else, they slowly lose the connection with themselves, and that loss carries a price far greater than any rejection they fear. For many people, rejection is one of the most feared experiences in life. The possibility of being criticized, ignored, misunderstood, or excluded can feel deeply unsettling. This fear often shapes decisions long before any actual rejection occurs. People hold back their opinions, hide their true feelings, and avoid pursuing meaningful opportunities simply because they are afraid of how others might respond. Yet what makes rejection so powerful is not the event itself, but the meaning people attach to it. They interpret rejection as evidence that they are not good enough, not worthy enough, or not valuable enough. Once this belief takes root, rejection becomes something to avoid at all costs. The moment a person begins to question this belief, a profound shift can occur. They start to realize that rejection does not necessarily reveal their worth. More often, it reveals differences in perspectives, values, expectations, or circumstances. Not everyone will understand them, appreciate them, or agree with them, and that is a natural part of human existence. The desire to be accepted by everyone is not only impossible but also deeply limiting. When a person accepts this reality, rejection begins to lose its emotional grip. Every rejection contains information. It forces a person to look inward and examine what truly matters. Sometimes rejection reveals areas where growth is needed. Other times it reveals the courage required to remain authentic, despite disapproval. Either way, it becomes a teacher rather than an enemy. Instead of asking, "Why am I not accepted?" a person begins asking, "What can I learn from this experience?" This simple change in perspective transforms pain into insight. Many individuals spend years shaping themselves to avoid rejection, only to discover that rejection arrives anyway. No matter how careful, talented, kind, or successful someone becomes, there will always be people who misunderstand them. There will always be situations where they are overlooked or criticized. Once this truth is understood, a person no longer wastes energy trying to control every opinion around them. They begin focusing on something far more important. Remaining true to themselves, rejection also exposes hidden strengths. When approval disappears, a person is forced to stand on their own foundation. They discover whether their confidence comes from within or from the reactions of others. In many cases, the experiences that initially seem most painful become the moments that lead to the greatest personal growth. The loss of acceptance can reveal independence. Criticism can reveal resilience. Being misunderstood can reveal self-awareness. There is also a strange freedom that emerges when rejection is no longer feared. A person becomes more willing to speak honestly, pursue meaningful goals, and live according to their values. They stop measuring every action against the possibility of disapproval. Instead of asking whether everyone will approve, they begin asking whether their actions align with their truth. What once felt like a wound gradually becomes a source of wisdom. The fear that once controlled decisions loses its power. Rejection no longer serves as proof of inadequacy. Instead, it becomes a reminder that authenticity is more valuable than universal acceptance, and that personal growth often begins where the need for approval ends. Most people move through life wearing psychological masks without fully realizing it. These masks are not created out of deception, but out of necessity, fear, and adaptation. From an early age, individuals learn which parts of themselves are welcomed and which parts are discouraged. Certain traits earn praise, while others attract criticism. As a result, they begin presenting only the qualities that seem acceptable. Over time, these carefully constructed identities become so familiar that they feel like the real self. Yet beneath every mask exists a deeper and more authentic nature waiting to be recognized. The need for approval plays a major role in maintaining these masks. A person who fears rejection often creates a version of themselves designed to gain acceptance. They become the people-pleaser who never causes conflict. They become the perfectionist who must never fail. They become the strong individual who never shows vulnerability. These identities may bring admiration and validation, but they often come at a significant cost. The more energy invested in maintaining a mask, the less energy remains for genuine self-expression. Many people spend years identifying with these roles. They become so attached to them that they cannot imagine who they would be without them. The people-pleaser believes their value comes from making everyone happy. The achiever believes their worth depends on success. The caretaker believes they must always put others first. Although these roles may contain positive qualities, they become limiting when they define a person's entire identity. The process of discovering the authentic self often begins with discomfort. When a person stops seeking constant validation, the masks no longer serve the same purpose. They begin noticing behaviors that once seemed automatic. They realize how often they suppress their true thoughts. They recognize the fears hidden behind their desire to be liked. This awareness can be unsettling because it challenges long-held beliefs about who they are. At first, removing a mask can feel like losing a part of oneself. Without familiar roles to rely on, uncertainty emerges. Questions arise that were previously avoided. What do I truly believe? What do I genuinely want? Which choices belong to me, and which were made to satisfy others? These questions require honesty and courage, because the answers are not always comfortable. As self-awareness deepens, hidden aspects of the personality begin to emerge. Talents that were ignored may resurface. Opinions that were once suppressed become clearer. Desires that were buried beneath expectations begin demanding attention. A person starts reconnecting with parts of themselves that have been neglected for years. This process often feels less like becoming someone new and more like remembering who they have always been. The authentic self does not seek perfection. It does not require universal approval. It exists beyond the roles and performances created to satisfy others. As the masks gradually fall away, a deeper sense of wholeness begins to develop. A person no longer needs to constantly manage impressions or maintain an image. They become more comfortable with complexity, imperfection, and individuality. The result is a profound sense of freedom. Instead of living according to expectations, they begin living according to truth. The energy once spent protecting a false identity becomes available for growth, creativity, connection, and self-discovery. What emerges is not a perfected version of the self, but a more honest and complete one. There is a remarkable transformation that occurs when a person no longer depends on the approval of others to feel valuable. It does not happen overnight, nor does it arrive as a dramatic moment of enlightenment. Instead, it develops gradually as the need for validation begins to loosen its grip. The person who once measured their worth through praise, acceptance, and recognition starts to discover a more stable source of confidence within themselves. This shift changes not only how they see themselves, but also how they experience every aspect of life. One of the first changes is a sense of emotional freedom. When approval is no longer the foundation of self-worth, the opinions of others lose much of their power. Compliments are appreciated, but they are no longer necessary for feeling good about oneself. Criticism may still sting, but it no longer feels like a threat to identity. A person becomes less reactive because their sense of value is not constantly rising and falling with external feedback. This freedom also brings clarity. Many people spend years making decisions based on what will impress others, avoid criticism, or gain acceptance. Their choices become influenced by fear rather than genuine desire. Once validation is no longer the primary goal, decision-making becomes simpler. A person begins asking what aligns with their values instead of what will earn approval. This creates a stronger connection between actions and personal truth. Relationships often change as well. When someone seeks validation, they may unconsciously shape themselves to fit the expectations of those around them. They become who others want them to be rather than who they truly are. While this may create temporary harmony, it often prevents genuine connection. Authentic relationships require honesty, not performance. As a person becomes more comfortable being themselves, they attract connections based on sincerity rather than approval seeking. Some relationships may fade, but those that remain tend to become deeper and more meaningful. Another important change is the reduction of anxiety. Much of human stress comes from worrying about how others perceive us. People replay conversations, overanalyze interactions, and imagine negative judgments that may not even exist. When validation is no longer the goal, this mental burden begins to lift. Energy that was once spent managing impressions becomes available for more productive and fulfilling pursuits. Creativity and personal growth also flourish in this new freedom. Fear of judgment often prevents people from exploring new ideas, expressing themselves honestly, or taking meaningful risks. The desire to appear perfect can become a powerful obstacle to development. When approval loses its importance, experimentation becomes easier. Mistakes are viewed as opportunities to learn rather than evidence of failure. Perhaps the greatest change is the emergence of genuine confidence. This confidence is quiet and steady. It does not depend on being admired, successful, or universally accepted. It comes from knowing that one's worth is not determined by the changing opinions of others. A person learns to trust themselves, even when facing disagreement or misunderstanding. Life does not become free of challenges, criticism, or rejection. Those experiences remain part of the human journey. What changes is the relationship to them. Instead of being controlled by the need for approval, a person becomes guided by authenticity, self-respect, and inner conviction. In that freedom, life begins to feel less like a performance and more like an honest expression of who they truly are. The moment you stop seeking validation, you stop giving away your power. You realize that your worth was never meant to be decided by applause, approval, or the opinions of others. True freedom begins when you trust yourself enough to walk your own path, even when not everyone understands it. The world may continue to judge, criticize, or praise, but none of it defines who you are. What defines you is the courage to be authentic, and when you finally embrace that truth, everything changes. Thank you for watching. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on where you may still be seeking approval from others. Remember, your greatest strength emerges when you stop asking the world to validate your worth and start trusting yourself instead. If you found value in this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who may need to hear this message today. Until next time, keep growing, keep questioning, and keep becoming the person you were meant to be.